26th, and I'm Council Chair Charlie Zully. Just a few housekeeping items. Because of COVID-19, we're continuing to conduct our meetings virtually under Minnesota statutes section 13D.021, and it gives us the authority to do so. And I invite the public who might be tuning in through our website and YouTube channel that we would certainly welcome comments or questions to our email at public.info@metc.state.mn.us. And we'll certainly take note of them and respond. Given this is a virtual nature, we will have a roll call for each business item. And to establish a quorum, Liz, you may call the roll.
Barber.
Here.
Chambliss.
Here.
Cummings.
Here.
Ferguson.
Here.
Fredson.
Here.
Gonzalez.
Present.
Johnson.
Here.
Lee. Lee. Lilligren.
Here.
Lindstrom.
Here.
Musset.
Here.
Sterner. Sterner. Vento.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
Zurin. Zurin. And Chair Zully.
I'm here. We have a quorum. I see Councilmember Sterner is here, but maybe having some connection issues.
Yep, I think at least on the voice now, so thank you, Chair.
Oh, there you go. Great. Onto the agenda. We don't need a roll call unless there is an amendment or an objection. I will assume the agenda that was sent out in advance and posted is approved, which brings us to the minutes from our meeting January 12th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve the January 12th?
This is Sterner. I'd make a motion to approve it.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second by Gonzalez.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Any discussion, corrections? All right, hearing none. Liz, please call the roll.
Barber.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musset.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Abstain.
Zurin. Chair Zully.
I'll abstain as well because I wasn't at the meeting, but the minutes are approved. We're now at the point of the agenda where we have opportunity for public comment, but no one has pre-registered to speak today. Just as a reminder, if you wish to offer a comment at a virtual meeting, please pre-register by emailing public.info@metc.state.mn.us. You can also very welcome to send any comments to us by email at that same address. Thank you. So first up is an information item. I've really been looking forward to getting a report from Brian Ricks at the Metropolitan Airport Commission. Brian serves as the Executive Director and CEO of the MAC, and as we all know, he is responsible for the administration and management of not only the St. Paul Minneapolis International Airport, but the MAC's 6 reliever airports. And before Brian begins, I just want to note, per state statute, that the council actually reviews elements of the Max Capital Improvement Program, and that action is before the council later on the agenda. But first, Brian is going to present a kind of a separate information item, which might incorporate some of that capital program, but more importantly, just a general overview. So that is, in part, just a coincidence I wanted to note. But Brian, welcome to the council, and it's good to see you, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Chair Zelle. Good to see you as well, and councilors, good to see all of you. I think Russ was going to pull my presentation up, if I'm not mistaken, and hopefully that will work. But I want to thank you for the opportunity to join you again this year. I think for the second time in a row, virtual. We'll look forward to getting back together, hopefully in the not too distant future. I also want to recognize Councilor Ferguson, who's been our liaison to the Airports Commission for a number of years now, and appreciate all of the support and the connection that he provides to all of you. I want to thank your staff. I know Bridget from my staff works hand in hand, and I think it's a great collaborative relationship. So Russ, if you want to go ahead and push it forward, you can go to the next one as well. Just a recap of our Airports Commission. Well, excuse me. First, I'll start with, as many of you probably know, or go ahead and go back to that one. We are a 7-airport system, obviously, with Minneapolis, St. Paul being the major hub airport, St. Paul downtown being one of 6 relievers, and then you can see Lake Elmo, Anoka County, Crystal, Flying Cloud, and Air Lake. We are, I believe, the largest airport system operated by a commission or authority in the country, and so it keeps us busy. The system works extremely well and is designed really to focus Minneapolis on the scheduled air carrier and cargo traffic, and filter the corporate, as much of the corporate and the general aviation traffic out to that reliever system. Works very well. Certainly was demonstrated when we hosted the Super Bowl, and we're able to accommodate all of those corporate aircraft that descended upon our region. You can go to the next slide, Russ, if you'd like. A little bit about our commission. It is chaired by Rick King. Rick does a fantastic job for us. 15 total commissioners representing different districts. The newest commissioners we have this year are Commissioner Lawrence and Commissioner Baylor, and great appointees with a wealth of experience. Go ahead, Russ. The commission has, I manage about 690 employees. I will preface that by telling you currently we have about 630 employees. Now, we were fortunate. We did not have to lay off anyone during COVID, and I'm very, very proud of that. The way we operated during COVID is we just did not fill open positions, and our staff realized that is what we needed to do to get through. I should caveat that by saying, unless they were absolutely mission critical. In the past 6 months, we have gotten back into hiring positions to help our staff out that frankly have been very stressed through this time, doing much more for less. We operate much like a city, with the exception we do not take in taxpayer dollars, general taxpayer dollars. We operate the airport as a business, really funded by rents and fees, and with the premise that if you use the airport, you help pay for it. If you do business on the airport, we receive a concession off of that, and it works extremely well. Next slide, Russ. And then you can go ahead and move on to a little bit about the impacts of the pandemic. Obviously, our aviation industry has been hit very hard. Really about $40 billion in losses between March of 2020 and March of 2022. When we bring that closer to home, to the MAC, we lost $218 million from our projected revenue in 2020. Our projected revenue was about $406 million. Back in 2019, so we were expecting to actually increase a little bit beyond that in 2020. Lost another $126 million in 2021, and we're projecting to be about $50 million below that roughly $400 million mark in 2019. As a result, we've had to make some adjustments, and the most significant adjustment is really deferring about $300 million in capital investment projects in when you combine 2021, that second 21 should actually say 22. So, or excuse me, in 2020 and 21. We were fortunate. We did receive some relief. Thank goodness. Airports and airlines got in early, and we received about $158 million in CARES Act funds to help us. Our MAC reliever airports also received some money, about $678,000 distributed between the 6 of them. Also, with the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, the more recent plan, we are going to receive about $118 million. Also, the nice part of that is some of our stakeholders, our concessionaires, have the ability to acquire about $16.4 million in relief for that act, and then you can see our reliever airports received about another $600,000. I also want to express we passed on over $100 million of relief to our airlines in deferred rents and fees, and also our concessions, including food and beverage, retail concessionaires, and also rental car companies. That totaled about $35 million. And our belief there was that we all need to survive this. We all need to come out of this, and that was a very good gesture on behalf of the commission. Go ahead to the next one, Russ. A little bit about passenger numbers and really what it looks like. You can see in 2020 the yellowish line there. Really, when we dropped into COVID in April of 2020, we only had 5% of our passengers flying out of here, which certainly was expected. That number slowly or gradually grew throughout the year, but it still, when you look at it, was pretty flat. And then you compare 2021, where we started the year off about 60% below 2019, and we ended the year off about 19% below 2019 levels. So it's been a gradual climb back. Obviously, as we all know, it's dictated by the variants that have appeared here throughout this situation. I just received, actually just a few minutes ago, our total numbers for 2021. So you're the first to hear that. My PR people are going to be upset if someone else hears it first, but it's at about just over 25 million passengers, which puts us about 36% below 2019, when we had almost 40 million passengers, 39.5 million passengers to be exact. And that was a record year back in 2019. Next slide, Russ. This gives you really a sense of our air service recovery. You can see again the blue line. When we dropped into COVID, we had 225 nonstop routes amongst all the airlines. That dropped to a low of 91 and has gradually climbed back to 195 active routes. 166 of those are domestic routes, 29 of those are international routes, and then the 32 below that are still suspended routes that we are still trying to get back. 23 of those are domestic, 9 are international. I think the good news that we've heard from Delta from an international perspective is that they have indicated they are going to bring back all of those international routes. It's just a matter of time, and certainly the Asia Pacific routes are the ones that will be lagging the most. The other good news is that we've been able to add 27 new destinations this year. A lot of that has been Sun Country growth, frankly, in the things that Sun Country is doing. So we do have some good news to share. Next slide, Russ. This gives you a sense of our annual or our average daily departures by month, and again, you can see it when it dropped into COVID. We were down to 123 daily on average daily operations, and that number should have been up in the 500 to 550 range. The dotted line shows where February is projected, so we're inching closer to that, and it's nice to see in March we'll get up to about 410 operations a day. So we're getting there, but it's a slow recovery. Next slide. A little bit of a sense of our reliever airport operations. Actually, relievers have recovered pretty well, which I think, and when you look at St. Paul downtown's numbers, 29.8%, what that tells us is that a lot of that corporate traffic has come back. And so a very good sign, and again, you look at our reliever airport operations across the board, they're all up with the exception of Crystal Airport. But again, good sign for general aviation that those numbers are coming back. Go ahead and move on to the next slide, and you can go to the next one. When we dropped into COVID, go back one, Russ. You know, one of the things we take very seriously the a program that we have termed Travel Confidently, and we wanted to ensure that as an airport we were doing everything we could to bring people back, or those people that needed to fly could be confident that they would be safe traveling through the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. So we engaged these 6 areas and focused on them, and frankly, it's been very successful, and we continue to focus on these areas as we move forward. Next slide, Russ. Masks. We all know about masks. The news on masks is that the federal government, the CDC and TSA continue to require masks right now through March of 2022. We'll see if that gets extended when we get closer. The other thing that we've done is we have gone through a couple of different accreditation programs to ensure that our airport is best in class. And the 2 programs, one is a global program called the GBAC Star program, and the other one is the Airports Council International Airport Health Accreditation program. And it's really about ensuring that all of our tactics are at the highest standards, and we're doing all we can to, again, reduce the spread of COVID, and again, ensure that people are confident when they travel through our airports. These are not just nameplate certifications, they are a very detailed certification application process that we have to go through. We first did it in 2020, and then we became recertified just recently, or actually in 2021, and we'll continue to work. Actually, we just got recertified for this year as well. Next slide, Russ. As far as testing and vaccines, we partnered early with the Minnesota Department of Health for a saliva testing site at MSP. That site has been extremely busy, as you can imagine, over the past month and a half. Actually, to a point where we had to go back to appointments only because there was so much congestion coming into it, and also the people waiting. It actually was blocking some of our security checkpoint areas. So we went back to appointments only. We also have a rapid test site that you can get tested if you need immediate results. And then we have vaccination sites both at Terminal 1 and Terminal 2. I also want to mention we've also had a Real ID site activated at the airport for about 2.5 years now, as the Real ID situation or the requirement has been pushed back, but we want to do all we can. And I'll tell you, if you're looking to get a Real ID, there's no better place to do it than out at the airport. It's pre-security. You can walk up. In fact, my wife went through it the other day. She was in and out, and I bet 10 or 15 minutes. So no appointments needed. So that's a good one. Next slide, Russ. I'm going to move into capital improvements a little bit here. Again, I mentioned we pushed about $300 million back over the past 2 years. Our budget for 2022 is about $267 million. Typically, we've been up in the range anywhere from $300 to $500 million in capital improvements. But again, we've had to push some back just because the revenues are not coming in like they used to. You can see the majority of projects are under our MSP long-term Comp plan projects, about 30% of those. We've got about 24% of the projects are MSP end of life replacement projects. And then, 18% with maintenance facility upgrades and ongoing maintenance at 15%. It is a tremendous asset to continue to maintain. And obviously the current concern is when you push $300 million back, you can't keep doing that because you're really going to get behind if you don't take measures to pick it up. Next slide. One of the things that has helped recently is the bipartisan infrastructure deal, and basically what that has done for airports is infused about $20 billion for airports over 5 years. When you look at what we receive from that formula, we will receive about $37.5 million over the next 2 years. And then the following years will be based on the number of enplanements or passengers that roll through our facility. We are estimating that we'll receive about $180 to $190 million. So that will help offset that $300 million, but it comes nowhere near to still where the shortfall is. There was also a program in there for general aviation airports. So our MAC relievers will get about $3.1 million out of that program that will be distributed based on projects. There's also a program for terminal development. It's about $1 billion a year. Now, large hub airports only qualify for about 55% of that $1 billion, but we can compete to replace aging infrastructure, increase ADA compliance, and really improve energy efficiency in those facilities. So we will be aggressive in going after any of those funds that we can for our terminal projects. I want to highlight just a few projects that we have going on out there. This first one is a new aircraft rescue and firefighting facility, along with a safety and security center. Now, what this does, the firefighting facility replaces the very first fire station that was built on the airport back in the 60s. It is desperately in need of replacement. And then we move into really combining all of our safety and security functions into one centralized facility to really support our emergency operations, our police department, airside operations. It's going to be a state-of-the-art facility that is going to serve us very well as we work through, incidents and anything else that possibly could happen on this site. Another project, if you want to move, Russ, is our, one I'm sure if you've been to the airport, you can go back one that you've become unfortunately familiar with, and that is what we call our operational improvements program. This is the project where we are adding 15 feet to the front of Terminal 1 and really remodeling and enhancing our ticketing areas, our baggage claim areas, and all of our vertical circulation areas. And that project is turning out very nice right now. It couldn't be timed any better. We needed the additional space, not only to support passengers, but to support social distancing. And you'll continue to see those improvements move forward. The good news is most of the areas that have been a disruption to passenger flow we're getting there. We still have some baggage carousel areas in the lower level to do, but the baggage carousels are much larger. We've gone to all LED lighting in that area. We've put terrazzo in the floor. We've raised the ceiling. So it's a much nicer experience really from curb to gate than it used to. We're very proud of this project, and it really is, I think, a good example of how the airport has been able to be transformed to stay modern. And then the next project I want to just give you a little bit of a sense of is a project that's going on down on the end of Concourse G between gate 17 and 22. And actually we're expanding the concourse in that area. We've added a large rotunda, and then we've added space above, which you can kind of see on the right side there. That is going to be a new Delta Sky Club. There's 2 Delta Sky Clubs currently, one on Concourse C and one on kind of between G and F in the main mall area. those sky clubs have become extremely busy and congested, and so we're very happy that Delta has decided to build another sky club. The way this works is the Airports Commission puts the shell up, and then Delta comes in and finishes the sky club up. It's going to have wonderful views of the airfield, and it's actually going to have an outside deck, obviously not used for days like today, but during good weather conditions where people will be able to actually go outside and spend time outside. So we're very happy about that. It's going to have new restrooms, new concessions, and be a fantastic addition to the facility. Next slide, Russ. The other thing that we have picked up again is our long-term planning effort at MSP. It was suspended due to COVID. And so we are moving forward with that. This is really, the program that you will approve, hopefully, eventually for us. The first public draft will be out in July of 2022. It's really a forecast of our future activity and really a forecast or a plan that tells us the projects that we need to deliver upon to meet our future demand. The one thing that we've added into this program is a very robust stakeholder engagement from all of our stakeholders, our communities, and we're very pleased at the way that is moving forward. So much more to come on that. And again, I want to thank you for your support of these planning efforts to support this tremendous transportation asset we have here at MSP. I'm going to touch just a little bit on some reliever airport projects. We are getting close to finishing some improvements out at Lake Elmo Airport, which has been a realignment of the primary runway. You can see the grading on the runway kind of in the middle of the picture on the right there, the old runway on the left side. But that is a much needed improvement to support the growth that we are seeing at Lake Elmo. It is not going to change the dynamic as far as the type of aircraft that operate there. But it's going to improve safety substantially from what it certainly has, adding new safety areas, a little bit longer runway, and new lighting, signage, and other improvements. And then we're also entering into long-term planning efforts at Flying Cloud Airport. Flying Cloud is our busiest reliever airport, continues to gain and operate landings and takeoffs. And so we're just starting that process now to really, again, determine future activity forecasts and what the infrastructure needs are to continue to ensure that that airport can serve the traveling public and meet future demand. Again, like the MSP Comm plan, it's going to be a robust stakeholder engagement program. And again, you will eventually see this down the road. And then I think this is the last slide, if I'm not mistaken. Really wanted to let the council know that we are focused on sustainability. We've got a really strong foundation with a sustainability plan that includes a 80% reduction in total emissions from 2014 to 2015, from 2014 and 15 baselines. 75% diversion reduction when you look at reuse and recycling and compost, a 15% reduction in water usage, and really an employee sustainability score of 85. And those are our 2030 goals, may be adjusted as we go. We are also working obviously closely with our airlines, especially Delta and Sun Country, to ensure that they are doing everything, and that when what they are doing, we can help meet the infrastructure needs for those sustainability efforts. So there'll be a lot going on there. You may have heard there's a lot going on with sustainable aviation fuels as well. Delta has been very engaged, and I think that the manufacture of sustainable aviation fuels certainly is an opportunity for the state of Minnesota to get more involved in. California is kind of leading the way right now with that, but I think a great opportunity for the state and I know the governor is very engaged in that as well. So with that, I think that is the extent of my presentation. I hope I didn't take too much time, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to respond to them.
Thank you, Brian. And you covered a lot of information. And by the way, as an observer, as we all are, the work you're doing in the customer area, baggage claim, it really looks great. Hats off to you. I know we have time for just a few questions if you're able to, and I see Councilmember Chambliss with your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair Zali. And thank you, Mr. Ricks. I appreciate your presentation, and this is the second update that I've had from you. And it's nice to see how, as a person that's from the Twin Cities, the airport has improved over the years and expanded. And now I get to see, a top-level administrative view of that. I do have a question. As you are aware of the news about the 5G C-band issue that's been coming up in the media, can you speak to your take on the impact and whether or not there is true interference and the timeline that you think is needed to address any potential concerns?
Thank you, Councilor Chambliss. Yeah, obviously a situation that we've been paying very, very close attention to, as have our airline partners. The good news is last week when I was on a call with Delta, and at that time, all of their mainline aircraft, their larger aircraft, narrow body to wide body aircraft, were in good shape because of the changes that have been made. The FAA came up with some alternative methods of compliance that the airlines were able to go through to be able to meet those requirements. And also by the end of last week, their connection aircraft, the regional aircraft, were all going to be okay as well. So we are in a much better place than we thought we would be a few weeks ago. And so that issue has really toned down. I will say it's unfortunate it happened the way it did, but I think ultimately the right things were done to ensure that it did not have an adverse effect on air traffic. There were some foreign carriers that were forced to. I know Emirates was forced to shut down operations for a day coming into the U.S., but it really has not been as severe of an impact, I think, as it could have been. What we actually had to do is we had to, we call them NOTAMs, they're notices to airmen. We had to cancel our category 2 and 3 approaches into the airport for a few days. Now, those approaches, the good news is those approaches are only used in really poor weather conditions, really poor visibility conditions. We were able to, after last week, we were able to pull those back off. So we are not expecting any impacts moving forward.
News.
Awesome.
Any other questions? Let's see. I'll make sure I see everybody. Well, not seeing any. Thank you again, Brian. And I know we all appreciate this update and our relationship with the MAC. We want to be supportive. We know there's continuing efforts we can do together, and both as a land planner and as a transit provider, we appreciate your engagement on some of our work. And having said that, I hope we next time we meet, it's in person. So we'll hopefully get you a wave.
Thank you, Chair Zeli. I agree. I hope that's the case as well. And thank you for the opportunity today. Have a wonderful meeting.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye-bye. Well, this brings us to the next item, which is the consent agenda. And is there a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Lindstrom.
Thank you, Councilmember. Second?
Cummings seconds.
Thank you, Molly. Any discussion? All right, Liz, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barber,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musset,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
and Chair Zelli.
Aye. The consent agenda is approved. That motion carries. Which brings us to reports of the standing committees. And first up is community development. Councilmember Lilligren.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and council members. Community development brings 2 items forward for approval. They're related items. The first is business item 2021-351, and it's to award $9.3 million in Livable Communities Demonstration Account Development Grant Funds to support 8 development projects in 6 cities. These development grants are for development or redevelopment projects that support livable communities and Thrive's goals of increasing access to housing, jobs, services, and transit in an effort to support a more equitable region. A total of 15 applications were submitted to the LCDA development program. 11 of those applications advanced to be reviewed by the Livable Communities Advisory Committee, and 8 are being recommended for funding. In keeping with council guidance, no more than 40% of available funds may be awarded to projects located in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and then the remaining 60% of the funds are to be awarded in suburban cities. The projects recommended for funding will bring deeply affordable housing units online, create livable wage jobs, and increase connections to services and amenities across the region. Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council award 8 Livable Communities Demonstration Account grants as shown in Table 1 of the staff report, totaling $9,304,250, and authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the Council.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second by Barber.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any discussion, questions? All right, Liz, you may call the roll.
Councilmember Barber,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musset,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
and Chair Zelli.
Aye, that motion carried. Councilmember Lilligren.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and council members. The next is business item 2022-16, and it's to award $4.4 million in Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development Grant Funds, or LCDA TOD, and to 4 projects in 3 cities. The LCDA TOD development grants are for developments or redevelopment projects that advance both livable communities and Thrive goals of increasing access to housing, jobs, services, and transit in an effort to support a more equitable region. That LCDA TOD grants also advance the Council's transit-oriented development policy, which is to promote moderate to high-density development projects located within walking distance of a major transit stop. A total of 10 applications were submitted to the LCDA TOD development program. 7 of those applications were advanced to be reviewed by the Livable Communities Advisory Committee, and 4 are being recommended for funding. In keeping with council guidance, the maximum combined award per city is $2 million. The projects recommended for funding will bring affordable housing units, livable wage jobs, and increased transit use to the region. Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council award 4 Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development Grants totaling $4,435,600, as shown in Table 1 of the staff report, and authorize our Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreements on the Council's behalf.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second by Lee.
Thank you, council member. Any discussion? I have to say, this is really exciting, wonderful grants, wonderful projects. Often not fully appreciated. The Met Council actually offers these kind of opportunities. Any discussion, questions? All right, hearing none. Liz, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barber,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musse,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Bento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
and Chair Zelli.
Aye, that motion carried. The Environment Committee has reports on the consent agenda, and there are no reports from the Management Committee, which brings us to the Transportation Committee. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, council members, business item number 2021-329 is regarding the Gold Line Capital Grant Agreement for 2022 through 2026 from Ramsey and Washington Counties Joint Powers Board. The Gold Line is a planned 10-mile transitway that will run generally along the north side of Interstate 94, primarily in an exclusive lane for buses within Ramsey and Washington counties. This agreement would allow Met Council to receive funds from the Joint Powers Board from 2022 through the project start of revenue service in 2025. The proposed capital grant agreement will allow the council to continue pursuing project activities, including issuance of a civil construction contract for the project. Therefore, Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute Metro Gold Line Bus Rapid Transit Capital Grant Agreement number 21I042 with the Gold Line Joint Powers Board in the total amount not to exceed $148,840,529 for calendar years 2022 through 2026.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Second by Lee.
Thank you, Councilmember Lee. Any discussion, questions? All right, hearing none. Liz, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barber,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musse,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
and Chair Zelli.
Aye, that motion carried. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, council members. Business item number 2022-22 same week is regarding the TPP administrative modification. An administrative modification is a minor revision to a long-range transportation plan that does not change the list of funded projects or make major changes to funded projects in the TPP. Through processes carried out in 2021, local government agencies were given opportunities to propose updates to 3 TPP modal networks based on recent updates to local plans. These networks include the Regional Bicycle Transportation Network, the Regional Bicycle Barriers, and the Regional Truck Freight Corridors. All 3 networks are used as one of the criteria for distributing federal transportation funds to the regional solicitation. The purpose of this administrative modification is to incorporate these recent network updates into the 2040 TPP, which were previously approved by the Transportation Advisory Board for the 2022 regional solicitation. Therefore, Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council approve administrative modification number 1 to the 2040 Transportation Policy Plan to incorporate the Regional Bicycle Transportation Network, Regional Bike Barriers, and Regional Truck Freight Corridors Network as revised through the 2020 1 update process and accept the associated public comment report.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Chambliss will second.
Thank you. Any discussion, questions? All right, hearing none. Liz, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barber,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musse,
Aye.
Sterner, Bento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
and Chair Zelli.
Aye, that motion carried. Thanks, everyone. This brings us to our final item and other business. Business item 2022-35, Metro Green Line Extension Settlement. We're going to have a motion second and then a presentation. But to start, Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, council members, I would like to introduce business item 2022-35, Metro Green Line Extension Settlement. This item before the council will authorize staff to proceed with a settlement agreement with London McCrossin Joint Venture, the civil construction contractor. The agreement establishes new civil construction milestones, creates a dispute resolution process, and expends project contingency. This action before the council will lay the foundation for us to establish a revised project schedule and opening date. We know this news has been long awaited by project partners. While there are other contracts to be negotiated, we now have a pathway forward regarding the civil. Our goal is to identify a revised timeline that delivers this project for the region and meets the needs of our communities, neighbors, businesses, and taxpayers. Therefore, Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute a settlement agreement with the London McCrossin Joint Venture, make payments in an amount not to exceed $40 million within 60 days of execution, resolve disputed matters through negotiations or an evaluative mediation process in an amount not to exceed $210 million, inclusive of the $40 million payments in item number 2, and make future payments as defined in the agreement.
Lovely, thank you. Is there a second?
Fredson, I'll second.
Thank you, Councilmember. I think at this point, we want to hear from both the project team, Jim Alexander, but to start it off is Nick Thompson, our Deputy General Manager and Head of Capital Projects. Nick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and council members, for this opportunity tonight to talk about the business item, which is a major milestone in the project. Before we get to the action, we thought we would give you some background on that we've provided before, but I wanted to make sure everybody had the right context for why we're getting to this settlement, and then talk about how the structure of how we got to the settlement. And then I wanted to put it in context of the overall project. This is one element of us completing this project and getting it open and getting the benefits of the Green Line extension for the public. So first, I will turn it over to the project director, Jim Alexander, to give some background on the project before I talk about the settlement agreement process. Next slide, please.
All right, thank you, Nick. So why don't we advance to the next slide there? Yeah, you can keep on going, Greg. Okay, here we go. So you've seen this slide in the past. This is the project scope, and a lot to tackle here. 16 new stations and 44 structures. At currently about a little more than 60% on the civil construction, and got a lot of things, a lot of components in here. Next slide, please. So just wanted to stress that, this has a big impact, not just within our immediate metro region, but statewide, 75% of counties in Minnesota have someone taking a paycheck home. That's really important here. Almost 2 million hours worked on this project. We are, we closely focus on the DBE participation and the current status. I think as of probably November of last year, the last tracking we have is about 21% of DBE under the Lindner Cross and contract. So that's going very well. We've been reporting that to you on a quarterly basis, and it continues to be very strong. And the project overall is going to support 7,500 construction-related jobs, amounting to nearly 350 million in payroll. Big investment for the communities. Next slide, Greg. So we have a number of stations underway. Got the opportunity to take some of you on tours to see some of those stations, and you see some of the images here. Things are really coming together, and these are really looking to improve the connections for our regional destinations for the ground rounds in Minneapolis, the hospital, Methodist Hospital, and just south of Louisiana Station, downtown Hopkins area, United Health Group, Optum's corporate campus, where we have the City West Station just in the northeast part of Eden Prairie, and also access to Eden Prairie Mall. Next slide, please. So I think we may have shown some semblance of this before, but we're pretty close to being done with utilities. Just a few more to wrap up, but site prep and mostly done. The big piece is just really the Kenilworth Tunnel and for the LRT that runs through Minneapolis here. And as I indicated, we're about 62% done on civil construction, and things are kind of quieted down for the winter months while we're going to hibernation because of the cold weather, but things will kick up pretty strongly again this spring. And systems contract just got underway last fall, and they're about 2% complete in the field. There's a lot of work behind the scenes on that contract since we've had Aldrich Parsons up and running on that contract. And then there's leading up to testing, we need to make sure that the system is safe and make sure our operators are well trained before we get into revenue service, but that'd be the last piece to get us to revenue service. Next slide, please. So we've talked about these issues in the past, and these are really the key pieces that are driving us to why we need to go through this settlement agreement process with the civil contractor. And the first is this quarter protection. And we've talked in the past that this is a requirement per our agreement with BNSF. And this was known going into the bidding process, but we were still going through the environmental clearance process as we were doing that as well. And so we kind of went in this eyes wide open, but unfortunately the costs were much more than was originally anticipated for this piece. And we now have change orders in place. That work is well underway. All the drill shaft foundations are in, and the wall, as you can see the image in the lower left, is getting in place. But this added a lot of additional time to the time impacts of the contractors that are looking to complete the civil work. Next slide, please. Next component, and this is probably the primary driver of why we need to get to a settlement agreement with LMJV. It really revolves around the unforeseen conditions. And, I've been getting a lot of questions, why didn't you know this? Anytime you're getting into the ground, you're gonna have unknowns that are coming in. And I'll just tell you, we've had a lot of very smart consulting engineers looking at this during design, and we came up with a tunnel approach that everybody felt was sound. And but just due to the unforeseen conditions, we are where we are now today, and we're tackling those issues. But one of those pieces, we have to build a secant wall next to the Cedar Isles condominium buildings to just really out of an abundance of caution, is we didn't want to see any settlement occurring next to those buildings. Could have potentially caused some damage to those structures. So we went the secant route, and that's really the driver of our schedule challenges as we're talking to you today. Next slide, please. So here's some images. You can see one little segment of the tunnel off to the left with the Sika tower in the foreground. You can't see it, but just off to the right of that image is the railroad that the contractor has to be a friendly neighbor to. So anytime a train comes through, the contractor needs to pause work and restart once the train has passed. And the image on the right is showing the secant pile installation. We have 2 drill rigs out there today and doing the drilling. But you can kind of see those that equipment is very close up to the the structures that we've been calling Sika. Next slide, please. So the third element, we haven't been talking about this too much, but this is another element that the contractor has cited of inserting into the project via change order that has caused impacts to their ability to get the work done. This was added round about the time that we were going through the bidding process. The city had received a CMAQ grant, and it was determined by the project partners that this needed to be added into the project so as we get into revenue service. So this was another change order that was in place. So next slide, please. So as I indicated, you know, it's not unusual to discover the unexpected, particularly when you're digging into the ground. And like I say, we had a lot of smart consulting engineers working with us to determine what was the best solution to get this tunnel through the Kenilworth corridor. And we also invited vendors that we ultimately used on this project to take a look to see if it was doable. And we all said, yes, we can get this done. But we have the unknowns to deal with, and we're addressing those as on a really daily basis. And we're going to get this tunnel done. Next slide. So we've talked about kind of stepping through the process. I think this goes back, probably about this time last year, where we said that our revenue date of 2023 really doesn't hold anymore in terms of when we're going to get all this work done. So we have the original civil construction schedule and cost, and we are working, and tonight will be part of this, the new civil construction agreement along with change orders that have already been taking place. That'll get us to a revised construction schedule and cost. Next slide, please. So if we take that where we are today with that revised civil construction schedule and cost, I've been kind of cautioning everybody because everybody's wanting to know what the revenue service date is, but Nick, I think, is going to talk about that a little bit, but we still need to get systems schedule identified, and that's in work right now. The civil is pretty much identified in terms of what we're looking to do for the revised schedule, and that information has been relayed to the systems contractor, Alders Parsons, and they are currently working on a new schedule. And with that, anytime the schedule gets extended, there are going to be costs like we're seeing with the civil construction. And so the systems contractor will be working on costs, and we'll have to go through negotiation on that piece. But then the next step is to revise. We need to update our supporting contracts, so our engineering consultants, our quality management consultant. There's a lot of behind the scenes consultants that are working on this project for us, and we need to get them updated once we get a better refined date for revenue service. And also our testing program. I think I've spoken to a lot of you about. We're looking to really try to refine our testing program so we can bring in revenue service as soon as possible. So that's another piece that's going into that mix. But ultimately, that gets us to a revised project opening day and cost. Next slide, Greg. So with that, Mr. Chair, either I'll hand it back to Nick or stand for any questions.
I will. Maybe we'll wait till questions at the end, and then we can finish up the process here.
Sure. Go ahead, Nick.
Sure. So I want to go through now how we got to the settlement agreement structure that we'll be asking you to vote on tonight. So with what Jim has outlaid, clearly the schedule and the costs that the contractor originally agreed to, those impacts made us have to rethink the whole agreement with the civil contractor and the schedule. So we went through a process to think through what are our options to get to a new schedule with this contractor. And so based on input we received from our project partners, Our peers, process, we talked with MnDOT, peers around the country, looked at other instances where this occurred. We felt it was very important to hire an independent set of experts that could help us work between us and the contractor to have an independent look at what the schedule can be and what the costs would be, and reach an agreement, help us reach an agreement with the civil contractor on a settlement. So we hired Venable, and through an action that this board previously took in a competitive process, and they've been instrumental in bringing us to the point tonight where we're at, where we've got general agreement that we can move forward on a settlement of this. Next slide. So the framework of the agreement that we're working towards here is that you'll be asked to execute or authorize the execution of this agreement. Has some key principles that really the independent firm Venable has really helped get us to this point, which has been critical. We have had disputes that we needed a process that both sides would agree how we're going to resolve those disputes, so that we can resolve them quickly and keep the construction moving forward. We all have the goal of wanting to finish this project and start realizing the benefits of the project in its timely manner, in the right with the right way. In both sides wanted that, so we needed a way to have any disputes that remain resolved, and so the framework has that. We also needed a way to make sure that the costs that we would be settling on would be properly vetted in an independent way, and that we could document and justify those costs that we settle on with the contractor. And then we really wanted to constrain the schedule to one that we can meet and hold the contractor accountable to. So the action will establish a new construction schedule that we will operate on once the change order is in place. We have been operating without a construction schedule for quite a while now. And so this is a very critical step, to have a schedule that we can hold, that we can work towards, and the contractor can be held to deliver this project. We've agreed that there are costs that have been incurred that were above the original contract. And so we have to agree to a payment schedule for how those costs will be paid to the contractor for costs that they are owed. And most importantly, we wanted to find a framework and a structure that gets the project completed in a way that the work can progress. We looked at our peers around the country. There's many instances where a major project similar to this has reached unexpected issues, and the result was a litigation process that dragged the project out. We really wanted to avoid that in a way. Our contractor wanted to avoid that. We want to complete this project. And so this framework that we will reach allows us to resolve all disputes in a way that progresses the project. Next slide, please. What's really important in the schedule is to think about, we are really changing how this project is going to be completed from when we put the contract out and awarded the contract in 2018 and started in 2019. We had a very different sequence of how the project would be constructed. And then what we're going to finish that with. And it's those issues that we've encountered that Jim outlaid that have required us to change the sequencing. The sequencing will add time, but it really changes how the contractor has to build the project and which segments are going to be completed. But our schedule basically agrees to that new sequencing in a way that is the most efficient way to finish the project and get the systems integrator in. So it allows us to turn over components of the civil construction in phases to the systems contractor, rather than finishing the entire project and then turn it over to the systems contractor. That step was very important for the systems contractor to understand their schedule, but also in a sense, save some time for us to complete the project. Next slide, please. So what the agreement we're talking about tonight is for the civil construction schedule. The schedule that we will be agreeing to adds 34 months to the civil construction contract. With the last phase of it being not a surprise, but the Kenworth LRT tunnel will be the last component of the project civil project that will be finished. Both components east and west of the tunnel will be finished sooner, but we expect the major portion of the Kenworth tunnel to be done in June of 2025 and ready for the systems integrator. Next slide, please. So cost, so the council and the contractor will utilize this agreed upon dispute resolution process to resolve the cost in the following categories. Extended performance costs. So adding time to the project incurs extra cost to the contractor over what they bid. So we needed a way to deal with and agree upon what those extended time costs would be for the contractor. They will have their staff on, much of their staff on 34 months longer than they anticipated in their original bid. They'll have offices and other elements that we need to add extended cost to. Obviously, when you add this time to a contract, labor costs will go up over that time, over what they originally bid in their contract. So we have to deal with costs related to that. We want to make sure that the subcontractors who are very important to this project are also dealt with properly within this agreement. So the framework deals with how the subcontractors will be paid for their costs, including any additional costs that they have for these changes. Important element of this is we've had a lot of change orders on this project, which is very normal on the project. A project of this scope has change orders. Central Corridor, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but we had over 1,700 change orders on that project to complete it. And we have a lot of change orders on this project. We want to close out those change orders that are still open as part of this agreement. And that really allows us to progress the schedule to not continue to be working through those change orders. So the agreement has a structure for closing out change orders that are open through December of 2021. So that's a very important element of this framework. And then it deals with any of the productivity and work that has been performed to date, which is different than what the contractor bid and is different because of the unexpected events or the events that we have pointed out here tonight. Next slide, please. So the council action, next slide, as was moved in the motion, well, is really about that first circle on this timeline of getting us to the completed project. We'll be adding 34 months to the project, but then we wanted to frame it in terms of what we need to do to get this project completed. We expect that we will be adding some time also related to revising the systems contract. And we also need to settle on what our testing schedule is and those other supporting contracts that Jim mentioned. Those two circles are still to be negotiated and dealt with yet. But by settling on this agreement with the civil construction, it allows us to then revise the schedule and reach settlement on those other components of the project in order to get us to the revised project day. So the action before you tonight for $210 million will utilize most of the remaining funds in the project. We expect that our forecast has, with this schedule and civil and what we anticipate with the other remaining work, that this will push out the project to be complete and open to the public in 2027. So additional delay beyond the 34 months, but 2027 is our new target date we wanted you to be aware of with this first action. We also, as I mentioned, we will be depleting, using up available funding within the project with this action. We anticipate, we're still negotiating this, but we may need between 450 and 550 million additional dollars for this project to get to the completion of the project, to handle those other components of the project, from systems integration to testing, to startup, to those elements, and our support contracts, including our consulting support for engineering. So those are the two bigger elements of this project to get us to completion, that we're now on a path with this agreement to get us finalize and finish this project. Next slide, please. So when we went through this, knowing that these additional costs and time, we looked at other options. This project has faced questions about its budget in the past. And with our local partners, we have looked at other cost-cutting measures on the project and changes in scope. Some of that was done before the project was let and under construction. For example, removing the operations and maintenance facility in Hopkins was an example of where cost cutting. But we're now at a point where this project has progressed substantially. We're 60% of it. So there are not elements. We are not at all. We are finishing the project that is under construction because it is the project that we've committed to building for the public with our partners. So there isn't elements like that, but this step tonight gets us a long ways to getting the completion there. We will need, as I mentioned, additional funding for this project. We're working with our partners. Our funding partners on this project have been Hennepin County and Hennepin County Regional Rail. The federal government has been a key partner in this. The council has been an important part of this, of delivering this project. So we are working and have been working with our partners to identify the available funding solutions to complete that extra need that we have for the project. But it's clear that what's important is to finish this project, finish the project we're committed, because the benefits of this project, though they will be delayed by this action, the benefits for our region, for our state, are still there. We are building, this is part of our vision for the Twin Cities, and stopping this project is not an option. And stopping this project also would be more costly. You do not just walk away from a project that is mostly done or 60% completed without costs and without litigation and elements like that. So that's not a viable option. It's not even the right option. It's not at all the right option to consider. It's to finish this project and is what the path that we're on. So next slide, please. So we in the region have been building a lot of transitways. This is a project that will be our most costly project that we've built to date. It's good to put it in perspective of our costs compared to our peers and projects that we have done. When we originally estimated our project at the $2 billion project budget when we started prior to construction, that was about $152 million per mile. With the overall changes that we've talked about tonight to finish the project, we estimate that the per mile cost of this project will be between 180 and 190 million per mile. That compared to our peers in Seattle and East Coast LRT systems are still within or lower than a lot of the systems that are being built out there today. And it's also, in context of what we've built in the system, this is not our first project in the region. Between our BRT system and our LRT system and our commuter rail, we have delivered our projects on time and under budget. This is the first time that we've had a project impact like this, and it's due to the conditions that we met. This is one of the most difficult routes to build a system like this, but it's also the right route for what we're serving and the customers that will be able to use this and the development that'll occur around this, and what is supported by the cities and the county and our federal partners in the region for the development of this project. Next slide, please. So the core elements of the motion that is before you is to negotiate and execute that settlement agreement. A very important step is there'll be that change order that establishes the new schedule and dates to extend the civil contract. We will have elements within the agreement for payment not to exceed $40 million within 60 days. And that's for work that we both, us and the contractor, agree has already occurred for the project. Is it important that payments are made for that work for this contractor to continue their ability to work. It also structures and resolves dispute matters through negotiations. And if the negotiations aren't finalized, we have an evaluative mediation process that is agreed upon with schedules between us and the contractor, not to exceed $210 million, which is inclusive of that $40 million payment within 60 days. This $210 million we're asking you to approve is, we do have costs. This is within the costs of the current budget of the project. So we have the funding for this agreement as it's structured today. And next slide, I believe is last slide, is after this action tonight, there is another step with this project, as we have had with some previous actions. This is settlement agreement, if passed, will proceed to the Executive Change Control Board that is chaired by Chair Zelli with the county this Friday to advance the final stages of the settlement process, and also an action for a future meeting for that same Change Control Board to review the final details of the agreement and sign off for use of the contingency, the 210 million in contingency that's available within the project. So with that, Mr. Chair and council members, we would stand for questions.
Okay, that's a lot of information, and I know that there'll probably want to be a discussion of questions. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing that would help me right now, I think, is could you, Nick, to kind of remind me of the process of how these projects come to us? So the point at which we take them over from the engineering and building perspective, kind of what leads up to that?
Sure, that's a great question. So projects like this and our other projects, tonight you had Gold Line on the agenda for approval and our board action with the county boards. They start with a local process, locally driven process led by, in this case for this project, Hennepin County, through an alternatives analysis that looks at different modes, different routes, identifies a need for a transit project in a general corridor. In this project, it had the advantage of having railroad right-of-way that had been purchased by Hennepin County in 1984. So some opportunities within this project that drove some of the alternatives. But eventually, a preferred alternative is selected with support of the communities and the local agencies. And then Met Council takes over the project to take it through the environmental process, engineering process, design process, and leads the construction process. And eventually, we will be the operator of the project. So these projects start locally, gain local support, and then we, as a regional, both as an MPO, are at that table, of course, also. But we take a project that is locally supported and bring it to development and operations and opening.
Right, thank you. Let's see, Councilmember, I'm sorry, I dropped my mic here. Councilmember Fernando, go ahead.
Thank you. And I just have a quick question, and it's the amount of money that we're paying, the 210 million. The information that we've seen is that was already built in within the budget of the project.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and council members. So the original project budget was $2.03 billion. As we were developing, as these issues arose and we were beginning negotiations, we did identify that additional money was going to be needed, and an action was taken to bring by Hennepin County and by the council to bring an additional $200 million into the project. So that was completed last year, 2021. And so this funding that is being requested in this action is utilizing the existing funding that's available in the existing project budget of $2.2 billion.
Okay, so my question was, if we hadn't had this unexpected expense, what would have happened to that money that was already budgeted into the project?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember, that was local money that was brought to the project. So if we completed the project without expending all the funds, that generally goes back to the source. A couple of recent examples that we have where that has happened. On the Orange Line, which we completed or are nearing completion, but we opened in December. We are returning some local funding to Hennepin County and Dakota County on that project. And the Green Line, between the Central Corridor Green Line, also has some federal, we're about to close out that project. We have some federal funding and local share available there. And so we're working with local partners in that case of how they want to deal with remaining funds in the project budget. So we have great examples of that, and we always work with our funding partners to see how they best want to deal with that funding.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Francisco, I called you Fernando, but that was my brain. Is there any other follow-up question? No. All right, Molly Cummings, Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Nick, for this presentation. I have two questions. I know that the more specific date and cost is coming out new, but this evening. But I'm wondering in general if there have been conversations with the stakeholders, the elected officials along the extension, and what the sense and feeling is about the timeframe and the cost, even though specifics have not been revealed. What kind of support are you getting from the 5 cities along the Green Line extension? And then Nick, if you can talk a little bit more about what would happen if shovels got put down? What would be the net effect of that? I know you've said that that's not going to happen, and I'm fully committed to this, and I've already seen certainly in the city of Hopkins, just incredible development that is a result of in the anticipation of the line. But if it were to stop, what exactly would that mean?
Sure. Mr. Chair, Councilmember Cummings, both great questions. We have been talking with our local partners for the past year about that there was going to be project delays. You know, this is the week we're kind of finally getting the opportunity to tell them what we think that delay will be. I'm sure there's disappointment in this delay. We're disappointed that this is not going to be on the schedule we wanted, but there is unwavering support for this project. The cities see the work that is being done. They see the development that's around it. They have supported it numerous times for the actions because they realized the benefits of this project. And though we're delaying the opening, they clearly, the generations that are going to benefit from this, they still see that value in this. So I think there's both the disappointment and the delay, but continued strong support for the project. In terms of what would happen, we have examples of that in peer agencies. Real recently out in Maryland, there was a project that stopped partway through. Extensive amount of legal action was taken. They ended up having to re-bid the remainder of the work. And I believe they settled on a settlement of $4.5 billion of additional costs for that project, from what I read in the reports, and years of extra delay and that to get that process. If we didn't have this action, we would be opening much later than 2027. What day we'd be opening, we don't know, because fortunately, I think we found the best path to get this project completed that gets us done in the soonest time, if that helps.
Thank you. Councilmember Barber, did you have a question?
Nick partially answered my question. My question was, how much time did we really, and he might not have a firm answer because we didn't look at it this way. How much time did we actually save by proactively looking at resequencing the construction? And so that's my first question.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Barber, I guess we don't know for sure, but I think we've saved years off the project, and we have saved money relative to other options that past we would have went to try to finish this project. This is the most expeditious way in light of what we've encountered, and we believe is the most prudent way financially to finish this project.
My second question was, have we been communicating back and forth with FTA as we've been going through this process?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember, yes, FTA obviously both a key partner, a key funding partner in this project, key oversight. We keep them very close so that they are aware, both in advance of this announcement today, that what is coming, but they are in the weeds with us on this project as developing, so we are making sure they are not surprised, that they understand this. They also bring the context of they see other projects around the country developing, so they understand challenges like this, and are supportive of the process that we are undergoing to complete this project. Because just like everybody here, they want the project finished too, because they funded the project because they saw the great value in this project.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson, you have a hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate this thorough presentation, and I know it's just hard news, right? It's hard news to take, and yet I know that there's been a team working on this for a while to get it to the place that it needs to be so that we can make the best decision going forward. I just have two quick questions. One is just in case people are watching, how will this impact other projects like the Blue Line extension or any of the other BRT lines, just because the money, you know, is dedicated to certain projects, but just in case people are wondering, will this do something to the other projects that other parts of the region care deeply about? And then my second question is, because we've had so much engagement, honestly, I think we're close to 20 years into thinking about Southwest Light Rail and early stage planning. How will we continue to engage not only those cities and communities along the line, but just all the communities and all the people in general that are going to probably be watching this with great interest now, knowing that, you know, it's being pushed out to 2027. And then, and just also what can be the process, you know, at least for the next year and maybe a few months for certain, that this council can just get regular updates too on how this is working, since there's still some moving parts to get it to where it needs to be. So those are my two questions.
Sure, I will, Madam Chair or Mr. Chair and Councilmember, I will take the second question first, because as you mentioned, 20 years of communicating on this project, we've gotten pretty good at knowing what methods work and how to reach them. And we have a very extensive plan in action that started a few days ago on how to communicate this news and how to work with our communities. We have been wanting to tell them this new schedule and this price because they're our partners. So we are starting today with this meeting and going forward, talking with them. We have a corridor management committee next week, which is all our partners on the corridor. That's an important element that we give them information, but also let them bring information to us about what they need to know, as they're the communicators also. It's not just the council, it's our partners and us that are the communicators. And we have all our neighbors on the project that we have developed effective ways to reach them. So I'm very confident that we'll be able to reach and answer questions. We also, if you're listening today and just go through the project website and we can provide that information, that we have great ways that you can ask any question you want and we can get back to you as an individual too. In terms of the impact on the larger project, you know, tonight you took action on Gold Line. That Gold Line is one that we hope to break ground on with our partners in Ramsey and Washington County this summer yet, to start the construction of the dedicated BRT in the East Metro. That project does not get impacted by this. We will be coming to this council early this summer for approval on the Blue Line's new community supported route. And that project is the next light rail project that people are counting on and compared to this. And they clearly, that project is in full motion, and this discussion tonight does not change our dedication to getting that project into the selection of a community supported corridor and then beginning the environmental and design process on that. And so we have, this council has adopted, in our region has adopted a vision for transit in this building out of our transit network. And we're committed to finding the funding to complete the project that we talked about tonight. But the other projects are on the same path as they have been. They're not impacted this time by this action.
Thank you, Nick and Mr. Chair. And my hope would be too that as we continue now to move forward, of course, any updates go to transportation and management, continuing to, you know, make the public aware, because if you are for light rail, this is a hard thing. And if you are against light rail, this is a hard thing. So the thing though is that, you know, we are committed to multimodal transportation throughout the region. Again, this was set in motion a long time ago. To not do anything would be extremely costly. So that's not a good option. So, you know, it's just a hard decision, and yet, you know, we need to move forward. So I think the important thing for me is, you know, lessons learned along the way and how we can take information and make even better decisions in the future. And I understand this, we had some very difficult parts of the line, the Kenilworth corridor, the tunnel there, and some stuff out in Eden Prairie. I get that, but anything that we can take and learn and bring it forward into what we do, whether it's the process or the actual work at hand, or what we learn through this contract renegotiation process, I think it'll serve us well, and just share that throughout the council as much as possible.
Thank you for those thoughts. Councilmember Chambliss has her hand up.
Thank you, Nick and Jim, for the very detailed presentation. It's good to have it laid out very clearly and understanding the complexity and the scale of this very important regional project. My question is, or maybe it's a comment, do we plan to, in terms of the scale of this project, talk about the impacts of the Southwest Light Rail, not just in the short term, but in the long term? We're making significant investments for the future. And, you know, there is so much change that is happening in terms of the level of investment towards this project. And we haven't really captured the potential investment of this project. And I know in other similar projects, can you talk about the level of investment, like with the Green Line, the first phase, that happened after building the project? You know, we're talking about the costs, and we're talking about some of the pain points, but this is a very long-term project that's going to impact residents and the region, you know, for decades.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Chambliss, that's a great question. I can actually talk about the impacts of this project. We know of $2 billion with a B, $1 billion of investment that has been built or has been permitted that is directly tied to this development of this project around the stations. This project itself, even though we're going to have some delay here, is a driver of development around it. The communities, the 5 cities have really worked to leverage this public infrastructure investment with their community development. So we are seeing extensive development around, just on this line, of $2 billion to date, and it's not slowing down. The developers are continue to work. We know that we're hearing from the cities that they are still developing projects that they haven't even been permitted yet that are tied directly to this project. The Central Corridor, every one of our transitways that we have built and opened has seen development around it. Central Corridor, even today, it opened in 2014, still seeing development occurring, new development along that corridor. We have some, we report on that annually, and we can provide some actual reports to that as a follow-up to this about the development we see on each line. But we're also seeing, land uses reorganize around that. We have, these lines are serving event centers. Our stadiums are being built around these. Our schools, hospitals are developing around these. It is just a tremendous amount of development, but particularly on this project, it's really seeing a lot of development around each station, and there's just more to come.
Great question and great point. Molly, do you have a question or comment?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nick, I'm wondering if you can address the conversations around ridership post-pandemic. Obviously, nobody anticipated this, and we certainly didn't anticipate what has happened with workforce around the pandemic. And obviously, again, this is being built for generations. I mean, this is a 100-year project, and it will benefit my children, my grandchildren, their children, and that's great. But how do you think that ridership and the pandemic, the return to downtown, the hybrid, so forth, how do you factor that into the project at this point in time?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Cummings, that question we are getting a lot for a lot of our investments. As you stated, this is a 100-year investment, and it's one piece of our network that we are in the middle of building. We are seeing these all-day transit services like the Green Line extension, where it operates frequently, fast, reliably, safely, all day, are the ones that are having the strongest ridership during the pandemic. So we have confidence investments like this because we're not back yet. Travel has changed, but this is not a line that's just serving downtown jobs. This is serving jobs all along the corridor, all day long, all weekend long, and markets that we knew there was demand that we haven't been serving. To get from Eden Prairie to downtown before, you had options in the peak period on express bus. But what if you wanted to go partway to St. Louis Park? You didn't have options. This creates those options. It's connected to job centers, not just downtown, but all along the corridor, that we know that people want to use transit to get to those jobs. Employers are waiting to bring back their work. They might come back in a different schedule, not 5 days a week like pre-pandemic, but it's clear employees will be back in the office. But that's not the only rider on this. Someday the Twins will be good again and get ridership, and there'll be a lot of rides that come on this for Twins games. By the time this line opens for a Vikings game, half the people arrive at a Vikings game on one of our transit ways. We're confident. Those types of trips are ones that we can serve, and we expect those rides to come back once we get past this wave of the pandemic. Travel will be different, no doubt. Travel, not just for transit. People are traveling different on roads. We're building a pretty good regional trail with this system too. And we'll have a lot more bike riders. Maybe that's one thing that has increased during the pandemic. So we're providing those type of benefits also. So we're confident, particularly in the long term, that we're building a system for generations. We're down now. Travel's different in the short term with the pandemic, but we're building this all-day reliable service that people want. We expect them to be strong ridership to eventually return.
Thank you.
I should also mention, I suppose, as the council is a forecaster of population, we have another 500 to 700,000 more people moving to the Twin Cities in the by 2040, and the system's being built for them too.
Nick, your thoughts bringing in some of our planning function. It is quite important for us as a council to consider some of our key goals: climate, equity, access, housing affordability, and of course the interconnection of this transit system is all really supported by this backbone project. So it does. We could go on at how to measure those impacts. Any other questions, thoughts? All right, I think we're ready for a vote. I would invite Liz to call the roll.
Councilmember Barber,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musse,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Bento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
and Chair Zelli.
Aye, this motion carried. Again, next steps will be an ECCB meeting on Friday, and we will certainly, as Councilmember Johnson said, reporting on this frequently. To set a schedule, we'll have a cadence of accountability that will be more transparent, as now that we've got this really important step in place. I want to just report quickly, because I know we have just a few minutes, on some of the budget actions and proposals that have just been made, even some as late as today. And I don't know if Judge Shenton is here. I just will highlight one. The governor, in his supplemental budget proposal, announced today a $200 million for the Blue Line, which is an extraordinary, I think, proposal, and ones that build confidence toward these transit projects. And certainly the Blue Line is moving right along, as Nick has described. And I think that's not just a vote of confidence, but actual resources. As we know, local governments are being stretched with these kind of really expensive projects. So, but rather than get a full legislative report, Judd, if you want to just give us a headline overview of kind of what's happened in the past few days, because this is kind of happening as we speak.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. It's great to see everybody. There has been a lot of news here this last week, and just in the last day here, obviously, with the update that we've received here tonight. But as far as the world of transit, Governor Walz has, in his bonding recommendations, recommended $60 million to continue the investment in arterial BRT transit in our region. That means great things for both the F line, the H line, and the F, H, the next three lines. I'm so tired. So those next three lines, F, H, and G lines, are all moving forward. So that is great news. We are also included in the governor's transportation supplemental package, where we will have matching dollars for any type of federal funds that are made available for the low or no emission vehicle investment, particularly for our bus system. So we're very excited about that. We're positioned to have about $13 million, maybe a little bit more than that, of matching funds available. We're waiting for that federal guidance to come out. Generally, we pay about 20% of the cost of those investments, where 80% comes from the federal government, and we're hoping that with that those new funds and that guidance, that we'll be able to aggressively pursue those dollars as well. And so obviously there was the news today about the governor including the funding for the Blue Line extension. Just to give that some context, is the largest funding that we've ever received in one time for a transitway project in our region was $70 million for the Central Corridor Green Line project back in 2008. This $200 million today represents 10% of that project, which meets the statutory limit of what the state can participate in at this point. And so that is an extraordinary and monumental investment in transit that the governor has put forward here. And so we're very appreciative of that, and we recognize the challenges of what we've heard today, and also the excitement of what we're seeing related to the Blue Line extension. And I'm sure we'll have a full-bodied conversation with the legislature about these matters as well, as we had a conversation with the Legislative Commission of Metropolitan Government this morning, and there's some additional news that came out tonight that I'll be sharing with them related to the updated budget and timeline. And so I'll be talking with them here yet tonight, but with the session starting next Monday, we'll be kicking things off. And one last thing that I would like to say, Mr. Chair, if you'll grant me this, is Brooke Bordson from my staff is leaving and taking a new job with the federal government. I want to recognize Brooke for everything that she is, which is an absolute star for us, and I wish her nothing but the best. But in the meantime, Hannah Pallmeyer from the Communications Department, who has legislative experience, is going to be helping me out while we find a permanent replacement for that position. So I wish Brooke the absolute best, and look forward to working with Hannah and all of you. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm sure I'll be back soon to talk about the rest of our legislative agenda this session. But for right now, I know everybody is ready to wrap things up, so I'll wrap them up as well.
Thank you, Judd, and I appreciate those quick highlights. Also, I will certainly echo and behalf of all of us, deep appreciation for Brooke's contribution to our so many things that we do, and we know how more than competent she's been. Really helpful to all of us, and know how great Hannah is. So we're in good hands. But you know, I wish certainly Brooke well, and we certainly hope her path crosses with ours in the future. Speaking of transitions, tonight I believe is Chris Ferguson's last council meeting, and I know this is not new news that. Councilmember Ferguson is combining a household, which seems to be, much to our dismay, outside of his district. So he is leaving the Met Council. But Chris, I just to say again, on behalf of all of us, how incredibly important your contributions have been to all of our work, and you're such a personable guy. It's been really great working with you, and I know that your leadership, particularly of the management committee, we just heard it today, the relationship with the MAC. You're bringing us a little bit of private sector sensibility, which is something I always appreciate. And the fact that you have really advanced in a very tangible ways some of the equity conversations that I think are well on their way, that you have helped set in motion. So your impact on the council will be long lasting. Please don't be a stranger, and we know you won't, but really want to acknowledge your last full meeting, and important one to attend it at that.
Thank you, Charlie. And I think, you know, I shared at the management committee, I think really what, you know, for me, you know, I maybe a little bit like you know, prior to getting into government, you sort of, it's easy to sit on the outside and complain about the things that aren't getting done, and or the challenges that exist in business. You sort of sometimes you poke at that, and you know, being on the inside, what you realize is that, you know, it's incredibly tough to significantly move things, because any organization like the council, you know, obviously a lot of political issues, but also legislative issues that prevent us from doing maybe everything we'd like to do. But what's truly impressive is just the quality of the staff and the people that we have. You know, we really have a group of people that want to get things done, that want to find a way to make things happen. And, you know, the slow pace of government is not a result of necessarily the people, but, you know, having due process, right? Making sure that we're hearing from constituents across the region, making sure that we're following all the laws and following the legislation, in some cases needing to change the legislation to be allowed to do things. But really, what I've enjoyed most is, one, is getting to obviously the council members, the people in my district, but really the staff, right? And understanding the people that make this organization work, that make the region work, and really get all the hard work done that allow us to accomplish really anything that we're trying to get done. And so I truly appreciate the time, appreciate the opportunity from the governor to do this, and we won't be a stranger, but we'll be engaging in different ways to help grow the region and make it a more prosperous one.
Oh, thanks, Chris, and wonderful words.
Thank you, Chris. We'll miss you.
Any other reports from any council members wish to share? All right, Mary, any word from the regional administrator?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to Councilmember Ferguson, I tried to chirp in at the management committee and my technology was not working. And so just a deep appreciation for all you've done with the management committee and with the council. You know, I still have my Post-it note on my monitor here, and it will stay, that says, understand the value of making different choices. And that came from you. And that's the way, you know, I'm attacking the strategic initiatives that the council gave us, whether it be equity or transportation or housing. You know, really looking at the different choices that we make and the value that we get from looking at things a little bit differently. So thank you so very much for all you've given me in your time here. Secondly, I just want to let the council know that in our transit system, we were experiencing many drivers and operators out on COVID leave in the last couple of weeks, to the tune of I think over 100 in 1 week. Those people are starting to return, and I will say that Wes reported today that this has been a much better week as those operators return, and we're able to put more consistent service on and not missing pullouts, and that's great news to hear. And just again, kudos to Wes and team Brian for really managing through a really tough time that we were seeing with our absentees with the Omicron variant. So great work by that group as well. And with that, Chair, I'm done.
Thank you, Administrator Boki. And if we are to believe the data coming from our wastewater system, and I do, we may have already had that peak and around the downside of this Omicron wave. Anne, any report from our General Counsel?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, council members. On behalf of myself and the Office of General Counsel, we just really want to echo your thoughts and thanks to Council Member Ferguson. We really enjoyed working with him and being pushed by him, and we just all wish him the best of luck. And I have no further report.
Okay, well, I can't believe it. Like a good train, we're a little ahead of schedule, on time. I just want to thank everybody, and to echo a lot of the words we just heard from Chris and others, we are blessed with a very creative and determined staff and a very creative and determined and aware council members. So, we're able to make hard decisions, but also embrace a vision for the future and stick with that. And, so hats off to everybody. I think this was a really important meeting, and we're certainly going to be meeting again soon to address this and other issues going forward. So stay warm, have a good evening. We'll see you very soon, and this meeting is adjourned. Good night.